Good evening, vinyl community. Hi, hello. How is everybody doing? I hope you're all doing really well out there, enjoying the weather here in the UK. It's gorgeous, fantastically sunny. Summer is here at last. So yeah, apologies. I've been away for a while, holidays and so on, and just general life getting in the way. But it's all been fun and enjoyable, and yeah, so everything's tickety boo, as they say. So yeah, so obviously, why am I here this evening? Well, as you can tell from the title of this, it's a special day for somebody that a musician and songwriter that I hugely admire. Yeah, Mr. Roy Harper is celebrating his 80th birthday today. So, yeah, this is something that I've been aware of that's been coming up for obviously a while. And I've been planning to make this video for a long, long time. Although I'm going to be honest, in terms of what I'm going to do tonight, this is going to be sort of quite abridged and shorter than what I intended to do. Basically, because I have about 60% of my battery left on my camera. I'm not altogether convinced that this will hold how long this is going to hold out for. So we're just going to run with it, and yeah. One or two people have asked me in the past for a bit of a ranking of Roy Harper's albums. I'd just like to say straight away off the bat, I'm in no way a super fan, although I do really appreciate his work. I don't know masses about Roy Harper. I've seen him a few times in concert over the years and hugely enjoyed his work. I sadly only have I only have 10 of his albums, 9 of which are studio, 1 is a live album. So yeah, there's massive holes in the collection. He's actually produced 32 albums in total, official albums in total, and that actually includes 10 live albums. As things stand at the moment. His last studio album was Man and Myth, which came out in 2013. I have a copy of that on order. It hasn't been available on vinyl for a while, and it's now only actually available as an import because I don't believe it's been repressed, and it's horrendously expensive. And yeah, as I say, I don't, even though I've seen him in the 80s and 90s, I haven't. I haven't got any of his later albums at all. So these albums are all going to be essentially from the 60s and 70s. So these are his albums that I'm going to just very briefly rank, tell you a little bit about. And they all, bar one, are between 1966 and 1977. Okay, so there you go. But as I say, I have ranked these, but it's incredibly difficult, really, for me to, because I just like all of his work. There's he's one of these artists that his quality control is fantastic. He doesn't come out really with any bad work. I would just say that some albums are better than others, which I feel is a far kinder thing to say. So anyway, so let's run through with this. So again, just to tell you a little bit about Roy. So he's obviously he's a legendary cult guitarist, acoustic guitar player, very influential. He's influenced people like Jimmy Page, who he's played with over the years, collaborated with, Pete Townsend, Kate Bush, particularly collaborations with Dave Gilmour of Floyd. So yeah, he's really worked with and he's admired by the best of them. Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull has said on more than one occasion that the reason he got into songwriting and playing the guitar was because of Roy Harper and his influence. So yeah. And you know, these days he's hailed by artists like the Fleet Foxes, Jonah Newsom, the harp player, American harp player. He's toured with her. And yeah, he has a sort of very idiosyncratic guitar style. I guess you could call it in the folk tradition, but I mean, he's kind of only in terms of, you know, a folk guitarist. Is a very loose way of describing his style and his music. He's, yes, obviously he's been compared to people like Dylan, um, although I think they're very, very different. But yeah, his style is a mixture of jazz, blues, um, and yeah, very strange individual picking styles that he has. He uses very unusual tunings as well. For instance, like things like Dad Gad, which is the open tuning of a guitar, six-string guitars, E, A, D, G, B, E, and he lowers the upper and lower E strings to D, so he takes them down a full tone, which obviously then gives different configurations of chords and sounds that you can actually get. But he uses many more sort of strange configurations than that. Others, I haven't got a clue what they are, and I'm always listening out on his records trying to work out what on earth they are. But yeah, very. So he's a colourful character, incredibly poetic with his lyrics. He has elements of sort of Keats, who he adores. There's a lot of politics, satire, and comedy that sort of, or sort of, you know, comedic elements that come into his songs to colour them as well. Yeah, but again, obviously, he's, you know, his influences was sort of as wide ranging, sort of Woody Guthrie, Leadbelly, Big Bill Broonzy, and obviously beat poets like Jack Kerouac as well were a big influence. And he actually started off in the '60s as a folks a sort of folk and sort of poet, not a singer and guitar player at all. You know, he intended to really just be a poet. That was where he started off, and then the sort of the guitar and the busking and everything sort of came in, sort of in the sort of the mid '60s. And sort of obviously he developed his style going forward. So anyway, so let's show a few of his records. So um, sort of top of the tree. These are kind of in order of my personal preference, but as I say, this is just my personal preference. This isn't, you know, you may disagree with that, you know, but this is just my personal preference, as I say, to his records. So, okay, so the first one is this one from 1985. This is Whatever Happened to Jugular. So this is an album that he did in collaboration with Jimmy Page, playing guitar. A lot of Ovation guitar on this, which gives it a very distinctive kind of zingy kind of sound. So obviously there's keyboards on here which give it a kind of 80s twist. But yeah, I mean, this is by no means a bad album. This is a great album. The standout tracks on here for me, and probably 1948-ish. Hope, I absolutely adore. Hangman, and beautiful song Elizabeth ballad. So yeah, very reminiscent of a Rizzler packet there. And show you the inner sleeve. So we've got the inner sleeve there. Roy on stage with Jimmy. Lyrics on the back. Okay, so that's coming in at my number 10. Number 9, going back in time about 9 years, 1975. This is his 75 album, HQ. And this is a special edition gatefold that was released last year. Yeah, this is a decent album. Obviously, the cover picture you've got there, which is by Hypnosis. It's got a picture of Roy seemingly walking on water. And it's interesting because this was a picture that was actually taken from the Isle of Skye, and Roy actually laughed and said, "Well, I've never actually been to Skye," so that was quite amusing from that point of view. But yeah, this is a decent album. Very much a group effort on this. You've got it says fellow conspirators, so other members of the band. You got Chris Spedding, Dave Cochran, Bill Bruford on drums, Dave Gilmore, John Paul Jones is playing on it, Steve Broughton, David Bedford doing some fantastic orchestral arrangements, and the Ray Worley and the Grimethorpe Colliery Band, which is on the very poignant last track, When an Old Cricketer Leaves the Crease, which is probably one of his most famous songs. Certainly one that I think he was nominated for a Grammy for that, and yeah, was certainly one of the songs of the year, and yeah, it will occasionally get played on the radio. Very few of his songs do, certainly on commercial radio anyway. But okay, so that's coming at number 9. That's HQ. Okay, going back in time to 1966. This is Roy's debut. The original of this is actually called The Sophisticated Beggar, and this is a 1973 reissue. This is Return, hence the title, Return of the Sophisticated Beggar. Some rather nice sort of pictures there of Roy through the years. Sorry about the glare there. Okay, and yeah, a little write-up from Roy himself. This was completely recorded in a very short space of time. I believe in his a flat in London. I think it was at his own flat. I'm not altogether too sure about that. Certainly when he was living there. And so this is 1966. Obviously his debut. Yeah, got some nice songs on here. China Girl, I love. Title track, Sophisticated Beggar. Mr. Station Master, it's quite amusing. And yeah, lovely song Girly on first one on side two. One of his wonderful romantic ballads that he would sort of litter his repertoire and his albums. So yeah, nice album, and very, very decent place to begin his career. Okay, so we're now moving on to number 7, which is this one. This is his 1970 album, and this is Flat Baroque and Berserk. So this was, I believe, this was his first album to chart, and I think it got to the lofty heights of number 20 in the hit parade. Gatefold there with all the lyrics. There's a bewhiskered, bearded Roy there. So yeah, recorded right at the end of 1969, came out at the beginning of 1970. Yeah, it's kicks off with the wonderful Don't You Grieve, or about Judas Iscariot, real favourite of mine. One of the earliest songs I actually heard of Roy's that really kind of resonated. One of my all-time favourites on this, How Does It Feel? It's just a fantastic, epic, 7 minutes, just glorious song. Love that one. On side 2, kicks off with the beautiful Another Day, which I think he's described as a frozen moment in time. It's just got a beautiful lyric. Wonderful orchestration by Tony Visconti, who produced this album with Peter Jenner, I believe. Yeah, and this is quite a common one of his. It's quite neat because it charted. Maybe it was more were pressed. I don't know, but you do come across this album quite a lot, and you can pick up a Harvest original for around about sort of 20 quid, something like that. So not too bad. Okay. Next one is 1970 going forward to 1977. This is Bullinaming Vase. And yeah, another big group effort here. A lot of musicians. Fantastic. I think this was also titled One of Those Days in England in America. So I think, yeah, the American version of that is called One of Those Days in England. So you'd probably be hard pushed to find this particular version in the US. So it would have a different title. It's the inner sleeve on that one. Wonderful artifact there from the Ashmolean Museum. And yeah, I mean, this One of These Days in England is just very much about, which takes up the whole of side 2. It's a real favourite of mine, and one of Roy's just spectacular epic pieces that's made up of 10 different parts. The songs parts all flow into one another. It's about a 20-minute piece. And it's just reminiscent of the craving the old days, I guess, in some ways. He talks about Albion's Everglades and Puffin Billy shunting heroes down the lane, and very much, as I say, harkening back to old times, and is just littered with sort of romanticisms of old England, I guess. But wonderful, really, really wonderful piece. And on side 1, there's a song called the Watford Gap, which he was actually sued for, which is a kind of a sort of Roy's massacring of a commercial fast food joint that was just off the motorway in Watford, which isn't there anymore. But yeah, he obviously the owners of the food chain were not impressed with his lyrics about going for a solid concrete burger and all the rest of it. So yeah, Watford Gap, a plate of grease and a load of crap. It's just fantastic Roy humour, because he just doesn't care. He's if he wants to write something about something, he'll just write it, and he's just honest. And that's one of the things I just love about him. But I think it does get him in some hot water on occasion. So okay, then we go to getting into the sort of heavy hitters for me now. 1973. This is Life Mask. This is an original on Harvest. I think I've shown this one before. So this essentially is a death mask or life mask that was taken of Roy at the time, and this is very much because he actually, I think he had some blood like an anemia or blood disorder at the time, and he was very, very ill, and it sort of made him think about his mortality and so on, and didn't think he at one stage, I think he was going to come out of it. So that hence the death mask. But obviously he's very much alive, as you can see as you open up, with wonderful staring eyes there of Roy. So a death mask becomes a life mask, I guess. So probably the symbolism. But these little panels at the side are interesting because they're very reminiscent obviously as a painting of Roy as he envisaged himself as an older man. And although it's kind of hard to tell because it's in two halves, he did kind of look like that probably in the early 90s when he was in his late, mid to late sort of 50s. So interesting. I love this record. It's probably got two of my favorite Harper songs on here. Bank of the Dead, which is just fantastic, with the wonderful help of his collaborator Jimmy Page again. And says in the notes, interestingly, that it infuriated him so much with the song that he actually threw the tape, the original master recording of it, in a bin and with some magnets to demagnetize it, of which I think Jimmy pulled it out and it was rescued. And then Roy said, interestingly, that it only actually erased the parts that he didn't like. Again, I just think that's great. And then the last song on side one, South Africa, which is just up there with my probably top 5 or 6 of his songs ever. Just absolutely beautiful. Talking about the country, South Africa, obviously a lot with apartheid and so on at the time, and all the rest of it. She is kind and beautiful. I am young and strong. We have never met each other, but it can't be long. Oft I have slept by her window. Oft I have whispered her name and wonder. Often I whisper her name and wonder that words in the wind blow. Happy that hers are the same. I just think that's beautiful. So yeah, sorry about that. Me not really doing it much justice there. Okay, so moving into the last few here. These can move around at any time and at some stage be my favourite or not, as the case may be. This is for a lot of people their favourite Roy Harper album, and in some ways it's probably his studio-wise probably his greatest achievement. This is Stormcock from 1971, recorded at the end of 1970. And just, what an absolutely stonking record this is. It never used to really resonate with me because I always used to prefer the live versions of the songs on this, and I probably still do, but I think I've learnt to appreciate it over the years. This is a reissue that I bought last year, and hitherto that I hadn't heard this album probably for 20 years. It just absolutely just blew my socks off. Just the arrangements of the songs, the orchestrations, just the way that they're put together. His vocals are just never been really better in the studio, certainly in the studio, than on this. The highlight for me is The Same Old Rock, which is probably a good 12 minutes. Epic again, as Roy's one. A lot of his greatest songs are, as he said himself, he writes in epic proportions. He thinks epically, and to get all his ideas down, he has to. So the songs tend to get drawn out a lot. But again, Jimmy Page, Roy's playing 12 string on The Same Old Rock, wonderful, and accompanied just fantastically by Jimmy Page again, who's actually listed here as Flavius Mercurius, because in those days, obviously, because of contractual reasons, they had to change the name, but of course everybody knew that it was Jimmy. So fabulous record. Next one was a real grail of mine because I've been after this album for years, since I heard it, and it immediately became one of my favourites. It's a real unique album in Roy's catalogue. This is Come Out Fighting Genghis Smith. So this is coming in at my number 3. This was 1967, so this is his second studio album. Absolutely produced by Shel Talmy. Obviously did a lot of stuff at that time. Yeah, it's probably the nearest that Roy came to, I guess, doing a pop album with a pop sensibility, shorter songs, um, certainly on the first side, but just really upbeat, um, it weird kind of changes in them and stuff, but just interesting, really, really interesting lyrically. Um, he was asked to do a single, so he produced Circle, which is on side two, which is like 11, 12 minutes. So that was clearly never going to be a single. But yeah, a really, really great album. And as I say, didn't really, never really produced another one like it. I mean, all his albums are individual and very different anyway, but that's one of the reasons I love to collect them. Coming in at number two, but on a good day, on another day, this could be one. This is Folk Joke Opus from '69. So this is his third album. This is just fantastic. Starts off, you got there all Roy's little drawings and sketches, and there's all sorts of jokes and little rhymes and pictures and all sorts doodles going on there. Sergeant Sunshine, She's the One, just amazing psychedelic, uh, just fantastic amount of echo, just wonderful. In the Time of Water, which is sort of reminiscent of Incredible String Band, interesting one there. Composer Life, One for All, which just has some of is just my favourite guitaring of his. Wonderful kind of Eastern feel, and then the epic McGowan's Blues on side two, which is like his, I don't know, I'd liken it to something like uh, maybe It's All Right Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, or something like that. For me, it's as good as a song as that. Certainly, where there's comparisons being made to Dylan, and his lyrics are just fantastic on that. Yeah, a real favourite. Highly recommend this one. I have seen a few people on the VC show this, and I'm not surprised because it's a fabulous record. Okay, and coming in at number one, yeah, this is the first album I ever heard of Roy's, and it's still my favourite, and it's Flashes from the Archives of Oblivion. I've showed this album so many times, but I just love it. Never get sick of it. 1974 live album, recorded at various gigs on his Valentine tour. Well, Valentine was the album that just preceded this one, which sadly I don't have, which I'm looking out for a copy. But yeah, I mean, this is just essentially just pure Roy, with just wonderful versions of some of his greatest songs that he'd written up to this period of his career, with the exception of Home, where there's a studio and a live version, which kind of bookend the album. But the highlight for me on this is the live version of Me and My Woman, which is just absolutely, utterly sublime. And is worth the price of admission alone, even though I love all the songs on this. Just fantastic recording, very intimate, just Roy talking to the audience, and as he does, whenever you go to a Roy Harper concert, you feel you are part of of the performance as well. Almost that he's very inclusive, includes you in there, and wonderful stuff. So that's my favourite pick. So I'd just like to say thanks, guys, for sticking with this for half an hour if you have. Hope it's given you a little bit of insight into Roy and a few of his records if you're interested. But all it remains for me to say is happy 80th birthday, Roy. Thank you for the inspiration and the wonderful legacy of music that you've left us so far. And I hope you continue to make records for many years to come. Cheers, Roy. Happy birthday.